started writing probably about 10 years ago, fiction, when I'd gone through undergrad and law school, and I was doing a dual degree, so I was doing all kinds of academic stuff, and I was very busy and high achieving, and had planned on being a lawyer, or maybe working in academics because I had the dual degree. But when I sat down, I had a baby in my last year of law school, and I sort of started reconsidering what I wanted out of life, and I slowed down a little bit, and also the economy wasn't that great for law, and I realized that academics wasn't that easy of a career path either for young women with kids. And I just started slowing down a little bit, and I think when I paused, I just started writing. I think I was frustrated a little bit, and it took the form of fiction at first, and I didn't really see that coming or plan for it to happen. And actually, the first time I started writing, I dropped my daughter off at a sitter for a little bit, and I went to a Starbucks nearby to do like property flashcards and all kinds of bar study things. And I was sitting next to this really funny group of people, and I don't know, I was very inspired because they were funny, but they didn't, I don't know if they were funny to themselves, but it was a funny group of people. And I started writing about my experiences at the time, but it was fictional, and I just kept going with that, and I think I had about 75 pages by the time I took the bar. I spent a little bit too much time writing, and more time writing and less time studying as time went on, and I passed those, so that was good. And then I began working as a lawyer, but as time went on, I would go back to my writing, and eventually I had another baby, and I was not that interested in having a big law job, and I was more excited about having a big creative life with and being a mom. So that's where I ended up. I just kind of gradually steered that direction. But I think it probably didn't come out of nowhere that I started writing. I've always been a big reader. I was the kid in the corner, reading a book for my whole growing up years. My parents would make me put down a book during dinner, and I always had, I think over the years I've been drawn to jobs that had writing too, like the legal career. There's a lot of writing, and I was always trying to start blogs about family matters to keep in touch with my relatives and stuff. So writing is always a part of my life. I just didn't become a fiction writer until 10 or 15 years ago.
Gee. Why law?
It seemed practical, even though it wasn't. Also, I liked being part of conversations, and big conversations that are meaningful to society, and the law seemed like a good place to be part of that. I was before I went to law school, I was working in an organic chemistry lab, and I liked it in a lot of ways, but I didn't like thinking about I'm sure that a lot of chemists think on a big scale, and they think about big questions, and that's how they end up studying what they do. But the way I was approaching it with my limited knowledge of chemistry, I was looking at doing chemical reactions and following the steps in an experiment, and I wasn't thinking about big things while I was doing it, probably because I didn't have a very good understanding of chemistry in general, but I wanted to be part of a big conversation and think about big things, and the law seemed like a good place to do that. And it was. I loved constitutional law, and I loved the classes. I loved being in law school. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. Did the writing talent ever break out within the law?
I definitely chose jobs that were about writing. Like I worked on I blogged for the agricultural law blog, which was fun. I had a lot of fun with that. That was probably my favorite job in law school, blogging, and I enjoyed writing. I wrote a article that was published by one of the law journals about coal bed methane production in Wyoming, and I did everything that I did was very writing focused. I mean, a lot of lawyers spend all day writing, because you're writing briefs to the courts and researching, and it's a lot of researching and writing, so it was actually a very good practice for becoming a writer. And it was probably good that I moved into fiction, because I enjoyed that aspect of, I don't know, I think when you get into the law and you read a lot of legal situations, I don't know, it's a lot of stories. The fact patterns behind every case, it's like reading a mystery novel, or, something more tragic sometimes, but it's very literary.
At the retirement festivities for Rosalie Wall, quite a lot of years ago, one of her students from Northwestern talked about a school of legal opinions that tries to get the story right, as opposed to just sort of naming the law that is being applied and explaining how it applies to the situation.
Yeah.
She talks about Rosalie sending her off to find an image of a disputed road in some county. She said, the people who are out there, they go by that road every day. If we don't describe it right, it's a problem.
Yeah.
They won't feel that justice has been done. I didn't know that legal writing had that dimension till she told me.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's it's all about what's happening in the world, and it's very human at the base of every single dispute that gets, spun out into very academic and legal and lots of jargon. There's just a story at the bottom of every legal dispute that's very interesting, I think.
Did the idea of doing justice carry over from law to writing?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard to. That's one of the things I struggle with probably as a writer, because you just have to tell a story and not worry too much about where it's going or if it's politically correct, but at the same time, I mean, you can't shut off that part of your brain where you're wondering about how the story will affect other people when it goes into the world, and what people will think of it, and how it might affect people. So I definitely think about that when I'm writing. So sometimes I try to shut off that part and then go back in when I'm editing or revising later on. But it's there.
Yeah. You mentioned being an overachiever. Well, what's that about? And how's it feel to be one of those?
I don't know. I think that, I don't know if I'm an overachiever, but yeah, I was one of those kids who was I always had all A's, and I was involved in a lot of things, and I did a very good job at everything. And that I think I've been letting go of that as time's gone along. Now I'm making very little money and and not achieving a whole lot in terms that society would describe as, successful, which is different.
Well, is being an overachiever for you, or being an achiever for you, about hitting somebody else's marks?
think probably when I was younger. I mean, for sure, I mean, grades, I mean, that's definitely hitting someone else's marks, getting a bunch of A's. It's not like I was definitely motivated by that. For sure. But now, and as time's gone on, I mean, I just want to do the best that I can do as a person. And I did music for a lot of years too, and I mean, that was more about playing the best I could, or writing the best I can now. It's doing the best thing that I can do. But definitely I've hit somebody else's marks and worried about that too. I think failing has helped me let go of that. Because I went to law school and then failed to become a lawyer. So I think after I took that nosedive, it's easier to let go of worrying about what other people are thinking or achieving there.
But that's the way you characterize it, as failing to become a lawyer, not moving to another career or choosing both. Another.
It's both. I failed to become a lawyer in some ways because it was because I wasn't willing to make certain sacrifices. I didn't want to spend all day doing that, and I didn't feel like my creative self was fed by being a lawyer, and so I guess I chose not to be a lawyer.
My lawyer friends, who I knew when they were really, really young, just out of law school, describe this process where right after law school, you know, you've got to pretty much put your whole life into it for pay so small that they won't even reveal it in public. You know, the greatest sin you can make as a first year first year out of law school is to tell anybody your salary, because this would show all kinds of terrible things. And it feels like like some sort of primitive initiation ritual.
Yeah, it is. I remember I had one job that I almost wanted to take when I got out of law school, and if I'd taken that, I think I would have gone down that path. But I would have had to move to North Dakota, and the pay was $23,000 a year. And I really liked the job. I loved the people. I loved them. I've never had such fun at an interview, and I really enjoyed it. But I had 2 kids, and the law school loans were bad. And at that point, $23,000 a year. I mean, just moving there and having to pay the law school loans and find daycare for the kids. There's no way I'm going to do that. So I let it go. I was like, that's the end of it. That was the end of that.
Right. Have you burned the law bridges definitively? I mean, dropped your license?
I have dropped my license.
Because that can be picked up again.
Yeah, I could pick it up. I think I could take a lot of continuing legal education courses and pick it up. But it would be a significant expenditure. That's why I let the license go, because it was too much money to pay for the classes, and it wasn't worth it since I was making nothing doing law.
Yeah. But it's a big deal, sort of psychologically,
it is.
to let that license.
It is.
I know from a friend who held on to it for a while and then let it go.
Yep.
It's like burning a bridge.
It is. I was like, especially when it's such a commitment to become a lawyer. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of money, and that's partially why I consider it a failure. And I think it's a lot of things I would just chalk up to like part of the journey. But when you spend that much money, it is a failure. A failure of that much debt. It's a lot of debt now. So.
I see. Is there any possible world in which you'd ever go back?
Maybe. I don't know. I hate to say never. I don't see myself going that direction anymore. I'm happy with what I'm doing. We'll see if how life goes, but I'm happy with what I'm doing. I would have to go back and maybe do some sort of internship and kind of freshen up my resume and all kinds of stuff at this point if I wanted to become a lawyer again. I don't see myself going that direction.
Mm-hmm. So, the redirector, as you're telling the story, was the kids.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. That was a
So
big
can you
life
say a
event.
little bit about sort of how kids change things, or
Oh.
change them for you, or what kind of things happened?
I had no clue what it was like to have kids. When I grew up and I thought, I always wanted to have kids, but I thought I would be a career woman and have them in daycare, and it would be like, I didn't really understand the tension.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, I mean, in the retrospect, it's obvious. But I had my first daughter in law school, and she was, I just didn't see it coming. It was this all-consuming feeling that I wanted to take care of her, I wanted to be with her, and I wanted to take care of her. So it was difficult to find a balance in a career that was not about balance. But and also there's just a lot of practical concerns when you have children. There's nursing, which is a big deal if you're going to try to be away from the kid all the time. It's difficult to try to figure that out. So yeah, the kids, I didn't see that coming at all. And then I had a second baby, and now I have three kids. So.
Yeah. So how long was it before you got to the point where you could take care of your kids the way you really wanted to?
I think I didn't really compromise on the kids, and I pretty much ditched the career right off.
But there was quite a period where you were trying to do both.
Yes, yeah, there
because
was.
you had a little bit of a legal career.
I worked for full-time for 1 year with my daughter, my oldest daughter, but throughout that year I was backed off significantly as the year went on, and I tried to work from home a couple days a week and pick her up earlier, and it was a rapid decline.
Yeah, that would kill you pretty much.
Yeah.
So what's the balance look like now?
Well, it's good right now. I like what I'm doing. I had a big writing deadline, February 1st. So in December and January I was really busy. But I I have 2 kids at school, and a 1.5-year-old, almost 2-year-old at home. So I spend the morning with him, but I get my coffee ready before his nap and kind of clear off the place and have my computer ready to go. And then when he falls asleep, I run in there and write as much as I can. And then when my husband gets home, he gets home like 6:30. We eat dinner, and then I leave for like a couple hours and let him do bedtime. So I get a couple hours in here and there, but it's enough to keep my projects moving and be happy with what I'm doing. And sometimes we have to watch a show at the end of the night.
So maybe 4 or 5 hours a day?
Yep, maximum. I try to get up in the morning sometimes, but you can't burn the candle at both. I can't burn the candle at both ends very effectively. I know some people can, but yeah.
And does your psychology accommodate the writing schedule? I mean, do you have the right number of ideas when you need to have them to make it move forward?
You know, I found that the more I work, the more ideas I have. So if I stop and then I just kind of like zone out for a while, the gears kind of grind to a halt, and it takes a little while to get moving again. But when I'm busy, I'm always writing down extra ideas for another project to start, or like I'll take little breaks throughout the day and email myself notes. I don't know. I never read them again, but I feel pretty on fire with ideas a lot of the time. I'm sure that'll wax and wane, but recently I've been really lit up.
Is there, I mean, just thinking of my own writing, is there is there any sort of OCD component to this?
Maybe.
That, that is, if you don't get the coffee made in advance, or you don't get the computer set up, or the writing time shifts an hour, it feels like the world is coming down.
Yeah,
on you.
sometimes. My parents were visiting this week, and I didn't do things the same as normal, and I definitely didn't get as much done. And I think I could sit down, and I do. It's nice to have. I think partially when I'm working on such a tight schedule, like I only have this time and this time to work. If it doesn't feel like my regular routine, I do feel a little thrown off. So maybe I have a little OCD thing going on.
Yeah, well, I know what you're talking about there, and how does it work? Again, quoting my own experience and asking the question, how does it work to have a writing kind of career as against somebody else who's leaving in the morning and coming home in the evening? And how's that dynamic?
Sometimes it's fine, and sometimes it's a little bit taxing.
Uh-huh.
My husband's very supportive. He still doesn't understand, I think, that most writers don't earn Stephen King money eventually. So he's optimistic that his hours at bedtime are going to pay off monetarily. No.
Yeah, 500 words a day.
Yeah, I know. But that's okay. Either way, he's very supportive, and I think it's actually good. Sometimes if I don't get out, if I don't get away from the house, I'm there all day, and then the kids get home from school, and it's just an onslaught of chaos, and then there's dinner, and then bedtime goes on for hours. Like, a lot of times I say that he does the first 2 hours of bedtime, and then I come home, and then we do the second 2 hours of bedtime. It's like putting kids to bed is, it's like a Warner Brothers cartoon. They keep popping up, and yeah, it's good to get out of the house a little bit.
Well, how do you manage that matter of breaks and vacations? I mean, you don't want the flow to interrupt. In some ways, you say to yourself, I just as soon never leave the house, because then I can start writing at exactly the same time every day and have exactly the same block, and then you realize after a certain point that
I know.
there's you need some other stuff.
I
How
know.
how do you handle that?
Well, you're right. It is difficult. Since I'll go on vacation, and I realize that I have no writing time or no time to myself. Once I give up the writing time, it's just, I'm at the kids' beck and call all day long. So it is difficult, or if I try to scrape out a couple minutes here and there, it's more difficult. Although I found that again, my parents live in Rapid City, South Dakota, and I'll go out there and I'll find a few minutes here and there, and I plug away at whatever project I've been working on, and it's like a little vacation from my vacation to interact with all my pretend people.
Yes. Well, we've left the pretend people out of the conversation far too long. Can you say something about what your projects have been and what you've worked on?
Sure. The book that I have one book out that's published right now, and that's called Ruby's Misadventures with Reality, and it's a cozy mystery. It has some romantic comedy elements to it, and it's a mystery. It's funny. That came out last July, but currently I'm working on some other projects, same publisher, but I'm working on a young adult novel that I'm kind of excited about. That it's supposed to be it's set at a summer camp, and it's very silly, so I'm having fun with that. And I'm also working on a adult romance for them that's silly. All these people, I'm just having fun writing fun things. It's a lot of comedy.
Gee. Yeah. So, adult versus young adult. I mean, how do you navigate that one?
I know I was a little worried about that because I had never done young adult, but I put in the proposal for that. The editor, I think it was last summer, asked for proposals for this young adult series, and she said she wanted them to be like Wet Hot American Summer, which I don't know if you've seen that movie or the TV series, but it's kind of raunchy, funny, summer camp hilarity, and I enjoy that. So I thought, well, I'll just put in a proposal and see how it goes, and if I get it, I get it. So I threw out the proposal, and I got it, and I was a little nervous because it is young adult, but they gave it to me, so I figured they trusted me, but I decided that I would just write it, not being too worried about the fact that I'm writing for kids, because kids are smart and kids are complex, and I didn't tone things down too much. I didn't use as many swear words maybe, but I just wrote for people who are thinking and appreciate good humor and have all the same sorts of emotions as the rest of us do. The one thing I did try to think about, though, is I tried to put myself back in my shoes when I was a teenager, and things are a little bit more amped up when you're a teenager. Your highs are higher and your lows are lower. So I tried to think of that a little bit more, and maybe the experiences that you have when you're a teenager, like your parents and dating and things that seem more important than they do later in life, the little things. But I feel okay about it.
Is there anybody writing or even making movies or television that you feel an affinity for?
Oh yeah, lots of it.
What sorts of things are kind of the stuff that tickle you and that makes you think you want maybe not to do that, but to do something as good as that in the way that is good?
Oh, there's so many things. I've been working on romantic comedy stuff right now.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because romantic comedies are so over in Hollywood. I've been kind of wondering about that because the romance genre is huge in the book world, but in the movie world, romantic comedies are passé. And I think a lot of them are pretty bad. But I think there's some new things that are coming up that are good. I'm trying to think. I saw a couple things recently. I saw a movie called Slow Learners that I thought was really funny. It was clever. And I don't doubt anybody saw it. I'm sure somebody has. But it's not a big hit. And there's some other things on Amazon. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'll think of them all later. And also, as far as books, I'm inspired by certain books. I like Leanne Moriarty's stuff right now. I think it's very good. The Husband's Secret was very good. She has humor in her books, but she also, it's women's fiction, but it does have a chick lit sort of feel to it. And there's a lot of stuff that I think is very good. Susan Elizabeth Phillips is a great romance writer that I like. Right now I'm reading Euphoria by Lily King. That's really good. There's so much out there that I feel inspired by. Even like picture books and books that I read with my kids. I feel like there's a lot of good out there if you're open to it.
Yeah. So do you find yourself writing to a genre?
I wasn't, which was a problem because you can't sell if you're not writing to a genre. And now I am. I have learned my lesson. Which is, so what I'm working on right now is the adult contemporary romance. And I am trying to follow the genre guidelines. And I did the same with the young adult that I just turned in because it's difficult to sell a book if you don't follow the genre conventions. And ultimately, I would like to sell the books.
So, what's the relationship with the publisher like? I mean, how does that evolve from when you know, first wrote that thing in the coffee shop?
Yeah. Well, that's my first interaction with a publisher was actually, it's pretty personal because I'm just emailing with, you know, individuals, and the publisher I'm writing for right now is a place called Entangled, and I first submitted the book that's published to I don't know, that reminded me of it because it's Wizard of Oz, and my book has a Wizard of Oz theme, which is why I pointed at that. But the woman that I submitted it to, I didn't know her, but I knew of her, and then since then we've become friends, and she sends me things she's written, and I read one of her books recently. She doesn't work for that publisher anymore, but it's personal. I found that a lot of the women working at this publisher that I'm working for are people in similar positions that I'm in. They're working from home, they might have kids, and we're writing books and publishing them and emailing each other during breaks in the day, which is an interesting development in the world of publishing probably. But right now I'm working with an editor, and this last week, for instance, we've been trying to come up with a title for the romance that I've been working on, and so I've emailed her probably 10 times with different title suggestions, and then she'll send me an email back every now and then and tell me if one of them sounds good or if some of them are horrific, which a lot of them were. So it's pretty personal. It's not like a big, like, walking up to a fancy building and trying to, like, having a formal interaction at this point. Now that I'm in the door, it's a lot of emailing and asking how your day was and chit-chatting about titles and blurbs, and it's fun.
So what was it like to get in the door?
It was strange because I thought it would be more. I spent a long time trying to get an agent and sending out the book that currently is published to agents and publishers, and it was difficult, and I had a lot of rejection, and it was kind of an arduous process. But then when the publisher that accepted it took it, I emailed it to him, and I just was like, there's that one. I expected never to hear from them again. And about 5 days later, they emailed back with an offer, and I was just sort of shocked. So it was just an email with an offer, and I thought about it for a little bit, and I said sure, and they sent a contract, and I read it while I was watching some show on Netflix. It was funny. It was a quick process.
And then how long is the process from signing the contract till you have it in your hand?
I think it's very variable. It depends on I think the biggest variable in that process is whether or not you're publishing a digital only book or a paper book, or a book that's going to be paper and digital. I don't think many things are only paper anymore. But if it's digital only, it can be maybe 6 months. Could be less even, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, was there a long revision process then once the contract was signed?
For me, there was it was a little bit longer than I anticipated because the publisher restructured during the process of editing my book. So I submitted a mystery, and then they completely changed their mystery line. They got rid of the longer mysteries that like the one I'd written, and and they have more of a genre, like short mysteries. I can't think of a good comparable example right now, but they're short mysteries that follow a very clear pattern, and I hadn't written that, so I no longer fit within their mystery line, and they had to find a new place for me or kick me to the curb. And eventually the editor that I'm working with right now picked me up, but it took a little while then, so then it was maybe a year or year and a half of editing with one editor and then working with another editor, and then eventually getting it out the door.
And how did they solve that problem of where to put it?
You know, they let the editors decide who they wanted to work with. So I think they threw all of the orphaned manuscripts into a pile, and they said, "Have at it, editors. Pick what you want to work with." And so it was sort of like, dodgeball type situation.
Uh-huh. And you got someone you could actually work with,
Yes,
and
I did.
and then
Which is great.
after that, is it a matter of just sending the next idea or the next piece or the next query to that editor and maintaining that relation?
I think it's probably different for everyone. But after I put that book out, the editor asked me if I had any other ideas. And I was like, sure. Got plenty. So I sent her 4 or 5 ideas. And she said, I like this one, develop this. And I wrote up a proposal, and I think the proposal is like 3 chapters and a synopsis. So I wrote that up and sent it to her, and so she sent me a contract for that, and I'm writing that one right now. But it's kind of a back and forth, a little bit collaborative. It's fun.
Right. The sense I get from writers' letters is that the most intense relationship in their lives is kind of without competition, their relation with their editor.
Yeah.
Somewhere from there you can just see their marriage, their their family.
For sure.
Just in terms of time on task.
Yep.
What strikes me as you're telling this story is how much, it's a matter of learning and applying the rules and navigating complex sociologies, essentially.
It is. Yeah.
It's what you need to do in corporate law.
Yeah, it's similar maybe.
But it's not generally presented that way.
Yeah.
What you need to do to make it is navigate a very convention-bound system and find ways to fit what you want to do into that system, modifying it as much as necessary to make it fit.
Yep.
That seems to be just what you figured out how to do.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
So law school didn't go to waste.
No,
It
no.
might not have been worth the money, but it didn't go to waste.
No, and it's probably, it didn't go to waste, and it was a good experience. It was a life experience no matter what. But you're right, it was figuring out the conventions of the publishing industry is a lot of what being a writer is about, being a published writer is about,
Yeah.
I think.
So, do you ever have like Incredible Hulk moments where you want to, smash out of the, the genres and the descriptions and,
Yeah.
right, 2 nudists and a dog,
I think that's where I started. I think the book that was published was not a genre, which I did not realize at the time, because I was like, I'm going to write a story, and I wrote it, and as time went on and I had to revise it into something that the publishing industry recognized as a book they could sell, and I had to learn all that along the way. I didn't know any of it, but that's a good way to learn as any, I think. And since then, I've written a couple of manuscripts that are probably, like 2 Dogs and a Nudist that no one's ever going to read. For sure. But maybe somebody will read them. But And the funny thing is that I thought I was writing both times. I'm not going to sound the final gong for either of them, because I like both those manuscripts, but I thought I was writing something that the publishing industry would like. I was like, oh, this is entertaining. People love it. And it didn't fit the mold at all. The first one, I thought I was writing women's fiction, and I included a terrorist subplot. that just doesn't go over in women's fiction. People don't talk about terrorists. It's I love women's fiction, and I don't know why I didn't notice that nobody else was writing about that, but I thought it was fine. But it didn't fit women's fiction at all. And if anything, it was probably more of a literary novel, except my prose probably wasn't at the level of carefully thought out and as a literary novel should be. It had a commercial feel to it, but it was more of a rambling literary plot, which no one knows what to do with. And the novel that I just wrote before I got on to writing the romance and the young adult that I'm working on now, I think that one, I also thought it was a marketable book, but I don't think it fit any genre conventions either.
Yeah, there's a bumper sticker from 20 years ago, Ladies Sewing Circle in Terrorist Society.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing people are not willing to imagine.
Yeah.
Well, is it a big category in your head thinking about writing? The literary stuff you don't do and the stuff you do?
I think what I'm kind of evolving into is trying to morph those a little bit. I understand. I should never say I understand something because I'm always proven wrong, but I'm beginning to understand the rules of the genre more. But I'm trying to move what I'm interested in and fit it into the box and put what I'm thinking about and put it into a framework that the publishing industry might recognize as something they can sell, and readers might see on the shelf and think, oh, that's something I'm interested in, I can buy that, but try not to completely lose the interesting characters and crazy terrorist ideas that I might have, just try to kind of merge the two. We'll see how successful I am.
Well, I think about, one of my favorite stories is the publication story for Confederacy of Dunces.
I love that book.
And I mean, what genre does a guy with a sort of weird intestinal valve have, grotesquely fat, and cannot get beyond the first paragraph of his thesis? I mean, there's nothing. But we know the story. I mean, his mother went to Allen Tate.
Yep.
And said her son had committed suicide. She went to Allen Tate saying, my son has written a work of genius and you should make sure that it gets published. And of course, a mother coming to somebody.
Who's going to believe her?
Yes, but Allen Tate read it and it was a work of genius and he did get it published.
That's my favorite book, hands down.
Really?
I love that book.
Yeah, but it's like somebody had to essentially destroy himself to invest in something that weird.
Yep.
Or I think about Lyre of Orpheus, which is about the attempt to put on, to produce an E.T.A. Hoffmann opera as supervised by the ghost of E.T.A. Hoffmann, who comments from the peanut gallery. with a nice sort of little lesbian love story in the middle, and all set in the framework of a kind of modern retelling of an Arthur legend. And I think people who think about genres would go nuts with something like that.
And how to write a blurb for that book, or a pitch, write a one-sentence pitch.
I mean, you can say another Robertson Davies,
Yeah.
and Robertson Davies has never written a conventional book in his life, I think. So you just don't know how somebody does that.
I know. With my my book that had the terrorist subplot, I had a lot of books you kind of sell over Twitter these days. So you have to write a 140-character tweet. You don't sell, I mean, a lot of books probably aren't sold over Twitter, but it's a lot. I think a lot actually are. But I got a lot of full requests based on my Twitter. Whatever I'd written on Twitter, I can't remember what it was, but it was not whatever 140-character tweet I made up about that book. It sounded good, but it had nothing to do with the book, what the book was about. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're trying to pack a big serpentine crazy thing into a small pitch or blurb or sell it to somebody, it's very difficult to do.
Yeah. So when you think about, I mean, you have a bunch of options as a writer that, even 10 years ago nobody would have had, including publishing the whole thing in 140 character installments. I mean, that kind of thing, or establishing yourself under one name for a respectable publisher, and then establishing yourself under another name and publishing all the crazy stuff that they would have contempt for, or find totally awful. And you also have the option, I guess everybody's always had since there was voice recording, of getting it out as an audiobook. And I wonder how you think about, navigating those options for ways that your stuff could come out, and how you think about the relation between what you're writing and how you might deliver it.
Yeah. I think about that a little bit, but I feel like I have such a finite amount of energy for marketing and just messing with the book after it's been written that I would prefer to deal with a conventional publisher of some sort. That I know so many people are having success these days with self-publishing, and I would consider that maybe after the kids were all in school.
I see.
But,
I see. So it's sort of a matter of convenience that you take the route that allows you to concentrate on the one on writing and let the other kinds of issues.
I know I had to do quite a bit of promotion for Ruby after it came out last summer, and just I don't have that much time, and just the promotion and writing blog posts for this person or that person, or having a Facebook presence and looking fun, saying clever things online all day. It was just took up all my time, and then I didn't get any writing done.
Yeah.
So that was kind of trying to back off of that and just make sure that I'm working on writing and not. I think it's difficult to balance that, but I can't imagine self-publishing or something where you actually do have to do all the editing yourself and cover, and it would be a big undertaking, which I could see doing better when the kids were. Yeah. Also, it's a financial undertaking because you want to probably hire somebody to help with the parts you can't do yourself.
Yeah. Well, this option of putting everything online and then just doing it as a digital book and putting it out through Amazon.
Yeah.
That is sort of it must be attractive when you have ideas that don't fit very well into genres.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. No, I agree.
So just to push on something that's a particular preoccupation of mine, partly because my eyes are going a little wonky. Do you have a particular feel for audiobooks as a publishing medium?
No, I don't.
Do you listen to them yourself?
I used to quite a bit. and I enjoy listening to audiobooks. I love getting in the car and listening to audiobooks. But I haven't been listening to them recently because the kids. I went on a trip across South Dakota maybe 2 years ago, and that was the last time I listened to a lot of audiobooks. I don't know, I think I put up a DVD player in the back of the car for the kids and I listened to something by Sarah Vowell, which was fun. But I don't have a really good feel for the...
It's not something you specifically aspire to.
No, I mean, if I had something somebody wanted to listen to, it'd be great to have it translated into, or read as an audiobook. That'd be great. But I don't know that much about it. Although I recently listened to a kid's book on audiobook, Hank the Cowdog, which the author himself read. The kids enjoyed it. It was really good.
Would you ever consider reading your own stuff?
No.
No, absolutely not.
I can't imagine. No.
Gee. Well, one possibility for making it big is, and you can name the people till you turn green, the people who found a formula, essentially establish their own brand, and then simply sell. They don't have to worry because they're selling another one of them.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, John Grisham comes to mind as that, but also locally, Lois McMaster Bujold. Marketing is unbelievable, but she's just been established that way, and Tom Clancy.
Yep.
He, at a certain point, people just knew what to expect.
Oh yeah, you don't even need to put the name of the book on the. It's just like the next Tom Clancy.
The next Tom Clancy, and indeed, sometimes if you get your formula down, well, you live forever because people figure out the formula and just keep publishing with your characters.
Yeah.
Is there any attraction to that kind of move for you?
Well,
Janet Ivanovich comes to mind because, again, a funny book, funny, romantic, same characters basically throughout.
I mean, that would be great if somebody wanted to read 20 of my books in a row.
But I mean, do you want to write 20 in sort of in the same universe?
I don't know. I think I would love to be able to pay for my kids' orthodontics work and send them to college. So I would do anything for that. But I don't know. I'm sure that must be confining as an artist, because she probably has a file of other ideas she'd like to follow up on, or I feel like people like that are very prolific though too. So maybe she has some time to squeeze in something else.
Yeah.
William Kent Kruger comes to mind. He what is that? He has his Cork O'Connor series, but he did get in the name's escaping me. Grace. What's the name of the book? I can't remember. He has one that came out that isn't part of the Cork O'Connor series.
Uh-huh. Well, in some ways, you can be prolific because you've got so much of your work done for you. Just develop the character. You can even reference the last book.
Yeah.
Well, this business of orthodontia really makes me want to ask, if somebody, I don't know how much money would have to be dumped upon you to make it, to make you not worry, but let's just say $1 million. At this point, if someone gave you access to $1 million to solve the orthodontia problems and 3 college education problems and things like that, would you seriously change direction in your writing?
I don't think so. I feel like I haven't fully explored the path that I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'd keep going.
That's fascinating. Now, the way you described it at the beginning, experience in the coffee shop. I know kind of how that sort of thing happens. The first thing I wrote was in the voice of a dog. And I did it because my parents were having a party downstairs, and so I didn't want to be around them, so I had nothing to do. Started writing in the voice of a dog. These things just emerge,
Yeah.
But what emerged for you was fiction. Do you have any thoughts about sort of what it means that it was fiction? I mean, people in an absolutely similar tone said, "Well, of course I wrote poetry when I started. That's the only thing you could write, Or,
Yeah.
How does it? What does it mean that it was fiction that hit you first?"
Now that you say that, I think the answer almost feels obvious to me. It's because I read so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the terms I think in. I read lots of books, and that's what I love, books. And I guess it felt natural to express myself in that way.
Uh-huh. Do you think it ever might feel natural to express yourself in some other way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, also, I can't speak to other people, but I always have had a real need to create and make things. So I think as a kid I was really big clarinet player, so I played the clarinet pretty obsessively, and I loved that. And that was, if I didn't play the clarinet every day and work on the piece I was working on, I felt unfulfilled. And I've enjoyed painting before. I think I refinished furniture when the kids were born because I was excited about making nice things for their rooms. I liked to do creative things. I think the writing is just another part of that.
So poetry's not impossible?
No, I'm not sure if I'd be a really good poet, but
Plays?
I don't feel fancy enough to be a poet.
Plays and screenplays and things like that?
Yeah, I could. One of my friends, Christina, who's in Northeast, she's a screenwriter, and I've been reading her things for her and talking with her, and I could see working on screenplays and plays. I had an idea for one the other day, actually.
Well, in the genre, I mean, in the sort of thing you're writing, it would be natural at some point to think about movie rights, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of books that are out there have movie rights sold because it does seem natural. I don't think a lot of them are made, but yeah. I think a lot of the things that I write could be made into movies, and I think kind of visually. So when I'm writing, I kind of see things playing out in my head. So I think I almost see it as a movie.
Yeah. Is this camp idea one that's going to settle with you? I mean, the summer camp movies are a wonderful genre.
They are.
They're fun. I mean, there are of course awful raunchy ones,
oh, yeah.
but they're also just sweet, funny, and it's a great. I mean, I run a little summer camp for about a month in the spring, and it's sort of the spirit of camp is just the most.
I think that's why it's fun. The spirit of camp is just so exciting and new, and it's an escape from your regular life a little bit. And
do you see yourself staying with that at all?
I would be thrilled to write another summer camp book. I don't know if my plan right now is I turn the summer camp book in, so I have to work on revising that and editing it out with the editor after she reads it. We'll see what she says, and the romance, and I'm going to see what happens with those two. But I kind of had it in the back of my mind. I was thinking about more summer camp books when I was writing it. What the other characters might do if different characters were in.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.